This week's tutorial is all about engaging learners, and I thought I'd take you through the tutorial by working actually through the Engaging Learners module. What I'm going to do to support this video recording is make a couple of video recordings to also support how to use the chat room and also how to make a web quest within the Moodle wiki. And I'll place those in the how-to guide folder or just below it. You'll find links to the videos. Okay, so I'm going to open up the Engaging Learners module. And work through the pages very quickly, and then you can look at the other videos, accompanying videos to support this. So first of all, we're looking at the tools allow collaboration within a virtual learning environment. So those are things like forums, chat rooms, wikis and blogs. And as I've said, we'll be looking at the forum, the chat room, the wiki, and a way of using the wiki in a collaborative activity known as a web quest. Why do we need to worry? Well, when we have students working face-to-face with us, we use lots of different teaching strategies. We have people working in pairs and small groups or even whole group activities. On an online course, how do we replicate that? How do we have small groups, paired work, etc.? How do we get people talking to each other? Well, one of the ways is to use the Moodle tools available. And there is a chat room. A chat room is for synchronous communication. People need to be in the room at the same time. And some of your learners will already have got used to things like this through things like MSN Messenger, or they may be using Skype. And so the use of the Moodle chat room won't come as, anything particularly new to them. But there are things that you as a teacher need to think about. You need to think about chat etiquette. I found from experience that more than 10 people in the room and it becomes absolutely impossible to follow a thread at all or to follow a discussion because things get posted up, people type at different speeds. What you should encourage your learners to do is to keep their posts short. If they're not replying to the whole conversation and where it is at the moment, they should use the @ and then the person's name so that everybody in the room knows that that message is just a response to something earlier that one person put up that they want to say something back about. You shouldn't encourage the use of text speak or abbreviations unless everybody in that room understands what they mean, otherwise that can cause complications. And from a teaching perspective, I think it's a good idea to make sure that your chat room has a very distinct purpose and everybody knows what that is. So it might be a question and answer session. You could set your learners a preparation task prior to coming into the chat room, such as a case study to read or an article to read that you will then be discussing. I also recommend setting a chat session for a particular length, so half an hour, no more than that. And if you have a large group, you may want to hold different chat sessions. So you might want to put them into groups and then say your chat session will be at this time or another time. And finally, it might not be you that leads the chat session. You might want students to take control of their own chat session. So if you've set off some project work, you might want to put them into groups and then ask them to organise their own chat sessions to plan and prepare whatever group work you've set. Now, there are lots of ways that chat rooms can be used. You can use them to bring in an outside speaker, or you could use them to hold tutorials, one tutorials or catch-up sessions. I've recently been using the chat room also in Moodle at Portsmouth University, and they've done a bit of extra work on their chat room, and it comes up in a colour-coded fashion, which is really nice. So each person, as they post, has their post showing in a bar of colour, and that made it much easier to follow the conversation thread. Discussion forums are something that you should be familiar with already, as we've been using them on the course. So that's asynchronous conversations where you can send a post and it might be the next day or a few days later that you get some replies. But there are challenges again with discussion forums, not least the amount of vocabulary associated with them. And so I've just put in a Wikipedia article about forums. If you just scan through this very quickly, you'll see all sorts of words like threads, posts, lurkers, netiquette, things that your learners might actually have to understand in order to be able to use the discussion forum. So it's how you're going to introduce that vocabulary is something you might want to think about. And again, there's netiquette to using forums. And some teachers make it an activity with their learners that they actually come up with those netiquette rules themselves. But things you need to ensure are on that list are to respect each other's point of view, to know if you're shouting, i.e. if you're typing in capitals, that's deemed as shouting. You need to have a rule on whether you allow lurking or not, whether you allow somebody to read discussion forums without ever posting, or just until they're comfortable to join in. Again, text speak I've already mentioned. And I think that you need to make it very clear that when you think you're being funny in a forum post, it may not necessarily come across as that. What you write and what you actually mean through that writing just may not come about. So people need to take care when they write something down. So protocols are to keep posts short. If you're using the same subject, then stay within the same thread. If you want to change the discussion to something else, then you really should start a new thread so that it doesn't become confusing. Before you post, you need to think about what you're going to write and how you're going to write it, and to decide whether or not it actually adds something to that general discussion. And I think people should be encouraged to provide links to other online sites or resources, etc., that support whatever they're writing about. So that might be something to be encouraged. And you could, again, come up with the protocols with the group itself. In Moodle, there are 4 discussion forums, and we've already been through discussion forums earlier on in the course. Actually, there's 5. There's the normal standard general use, but there's in a social media kind of format. So it works in the same way as this one. But you'll find how-to guides, etc. for forums within the course pages already. And the last collaborative tool that I wanted to cover, we will cover blogs in reflection, but the last one I wanted to cover within this section are wikis. And if you don't know what a wiki is, then there's a link within the learning module to an excellent video called Wikis in Plain English, which explains what they are and why they might be of use. But I think most of us have met this one, Wikipedia. We've heard of it. It's an online website that anybody can contribute to. All right, and that's what a wiki is. It allows contribution from different people within the same area. So it could be a project that you're all writing a project report together for. It could be minutes of a meeting if it's a staff thing. It could be planning for something. So a sort of an ideas list and then putting it into order. Here's an example of something that a wiki might be used for. Say, for instance, as I've already said, we've got lots of words associated with forums. You could give learners each a word to go away and research, and they could bring back the meaning of that word and add it into a collaborative wiki so that there's just one document with all those sorts of things in it. I know one chemistry teacher who used wikis in this way as a revision tool, and everybody brought back something for a whole class revision wiki, really, on before their A-level exams. What I thought I'd do is, within the course area, you'll find another video which shows you how to set up one of these things, a web quest, but using the Moodle wiki. And here's an example of one, Internet is Killing People. Now, it's not the best web quest in the world, but there are a number of things that I really like, which is why I've picked it. One, great title. You want to capture the imagination of your students. I like the colouring, the gold on the black. I think it's very effective. And I really love the use of images within this WebQuest because they are really startling and stand out. But the thing about a WebQuest, it's for project work where there is an element of research, where information and things need to be investigated, found out, processed in some way, and then reported back to the group or to you, the tutor. And it has different stages, and those stages are fairly stable in that most webcasts have the same sections. So everybody will have an introduction, everybody has a task, a process, an evaluation and a conclusion. And many webcasts also have a resources page. Now I'll give you another example in the video that I create for this, which is around a numeracy project WebQuest that I've run in the past. But let me just briefly talk you through how this works. So the title is called The Internet is Killing People, and the first page is the introduction. Are you enjoying using the internet? And it goes on to explain that lots of people are using the internet, but actually it can become something that you can't stop doing. You quite often hear of online gaming people that are completely hooked, or people who are completely hooked on Facebook and things like that. And so that's the introduction to Internet is Killing People. But what's the task? Well, the task is to research the side effects of the internet, to know how it affects people in a negative way. So that was the task, and the process takes them through step by step what that means. All right, so they've got to make teams of 5 people, they've got to read an article and summarize that article. They've then got to make a survey. They've got to think of 3 questions covering different things, and they've got to go out and do that survey with at least 20 people, analyze the results, document it, etc. So they've got a task to do. Now at this point you might give them resources. Now the resources are actually embedded within their tasks. They've got links, but you might have a resources page which just has links or articles you want them to read. There could be online or offline resources. You then have to evaluate the work that these groups of 5 people have done, and I really like the evaluation within this because I think you'll see that this could apply to your the work that you do with your learners. So they're going to be evaluated on lots of different skills, their research skills, their interview skills, the accuracy, and depending on how they do, they'll get different grades, and there's some sort of information about how they can reach those grades within this grid. So a great evaluation page. And once they've done their feeding back, you would tell them how they're going to feed back, whether that was going to be an online presentation, or whether they were going to be doing face-to-face if it's a blended course. You then bring some conclusion to the work itself. So I think that's a really lovely WebQuest, and I've given you a link to it so that you can go and have a look through. And actually there's another example of a WebQuest within the Moodle area. And WebQuests are used quite a lot in schools. I think both of those are schools-based ones, the examples, but I think they have a lot of potential for online courses. If you want to use an online WebQuest making tool, there is a site called webquest.org, but as I've said, you can make them within Moodle itself using the wiki tool, which is what I'm going to show you how to do in a separate video. Finally, there's how you might use WebQuests and thinking about how you engage your learners with these different collaborative tools. In particular with forums, you'd be well worth going and visiting Gilly Salmon's 5-stage model. It talks about the need to make sure everybody's got access, that you get everybody socializing, so the welcome messages, the icebreaker messages, then simple contribution to a forum, so answering or providing some information that's not too daunting. And finally, you'll get to the stage where your learners actually take control of forums themselves, or hopefully they do, and they start to ask questions that they hope others will join in and answer, that take learning in a direction they want to go. Your activity for this week is to think about the different types of tools, the Web 2 type tools we've looked at within this module. Now, if you're doing online learning, you don't necessarily need to use tools just within Moodle. You could link to other tools. You could be using Twitter, Or a great tool to use is something called FriendFeed. You can register for an account with that. You might be using Skype.